About this shit, there's no way anybody thinks that this was, like, not just a fucking accident. Maybe I should have stopped the show that night. They should have, but think of it this way. Once you tell all of the people, hey, this thing happened, the show is done, they're gonna fucking riot, they're gonna be like, I want my fucking money back right now, they're gonna start fucking tripping. And I don't think they were ready to prepare for that, so I think that's why Vince decided to just keep that shit going. Because there was no way in hell. I don't think they would have been able to handle what could have possibly happened afterwards. That shit would have turned dangerous. If I spent, you know, $60 to buy the fucking pay-per-view, watch it at home, I'm gonna be mad as fuck. Now imagine spending more than that to actually be there. Imagine a motherfucker at front row, and then you see that shit, and then the show ends, and it's like, damn, I'm mad as fuck. I would riot. I would start a riot. I would break shit. I would go outside. I would throw bricks through windows. Imagine talking to me crazy and boom, I got a brick in my pocket, dickhead.
Love of his life and eventual wife, Martha. Owen was a successful amateur wrestler throughout high school and college, and even did some professional wrestling under a mask, posing as the original British Bulldog. But despite his family's pedigree, Owen had actually began to look for a career outside of the wrestling world while he attended university. Unable to find any alternative paths in wrestling, Owen would finally be trained in the Hart Dungeon and joined his father's promotion, Stampede Wrestling, in 1987. Very quickly, Owen began to stand out at Stampede. Between his last name, his bright blonde hair, and his exciting, high-flying style, many considered Owen to be a wrestling prodigy, and this was confirmed when he was awarded Rookie of the Year by Pro Wrestling Insider. It wouldn't be long before the exciting newcomer from the wrestling
a lawyer who was a
Get
more
the
senior
fuck out of
lawyer
here.
and
Oh my
well-respected
God.
lawyer in the city said to me at one point, I don't understand you.
Dynasty caught the eye of Vince McMahon. Though Vince had reservations about Owen's charisma, particularly because he was still very inexperienced.
Catch the eye of Vince McMahon, bro. No fuck. That's not how I thought it fucking happened.
In delivering promos, his over-the-top wrestling skills were.
I thought Brett had another brother that was wrestling, and they're like, oh, we want you to do shit with so and so. He's like, no, I want my brother Owen. I want to wrestle Owen, and they're like, And then I think it took convincing or whatever, but they ended up letting him in there.
Enough to earn a spot in the WWF.
Because number one, Owen was better than the other guy. And then Brett didn't want Owen to quit and then be a fucking firefighter. He's like, yo, you should wrestle. You're fucking great. Like, don't quit. And he's like, no, man. He's like, no, I'm fighting my fucking brother in the ring. So they had the fucking feud or whatever that they did. They main evented Mania or something. What was it, 10, right? Mania 10?
But despite his world-famous last name, McMahon didn't want Owen to compete as a Hart right away. This was because Bret Hart was already within the WWF and was slowly beginning to move up the card.
Maybe I'm retarded and I don't remember
correctly. Didn't want Owen to be stuck in the shadow of his older brother. Instead, they decided to have Owen compete under a mask and gave him the name of the Blue Blazer. The idea was that Owen's high-flying style would fit perfectly as a superhero, and it would allow him to carve out his own space on the show away from Bret. Despite this superhero presentation, the Blue Blazer never truly caught on in the WWF. Owen never had the most
best superhero gimmick ever was the fucking Hurricane, bro. That shit was crazy.
The top personality, which was a necessity at WWF.
It was goofy, but it's like, hey, it's him!
Was saddled in the lower mid-card until Owen left the company in 1989. Owen competed briefly back in Stampede and for New Japan Pro Wrestling before engaging
in this was the time where he's like, I think I'm fucking done here.
Talk stalled, however, as Owen didn't want to move his family to Atlanta, where WCW was headquartered. And in 1991, Owen ended up back with the WWF. This time around, he was presented with his actual name and teamed up with Jim Neidhart to form the New Hart Foundation after Bret had begun his singles campaign.
Wasn't he supposed to face Godwin's for the IC? Owen Hart, I don't fucking know.
Off in 1993, however, when he was
I don't know shit about this time period.
Brother. Owen had taken the role as a jealous, crybaby younger brother who had grown tired of living in his brother's shadow. Owen and Bret had a series of matches that are technical masterpieces, and these matches showcased the high wrestling IQ of both men. Though he was unable to win the WWF Championship from his brother Bret, Owen's feud with Bret and his crybaby gimmick had clearly elevated his status in the company. Owen would go on to capture the tag team titles 4 times between 1995 and 1999.
Didn't Owen steal a Slammy or some shit?
Continental Championship 2 times in 1997 and had illustrious rivalries with Stone Cold Steve Austin and D-Generation X. With this increased role, however, was an increased obligation to be on the road. Owen had a reputation for being an extremely
ad break in 2 minutes. Did you guys know that if you sub or Twitch Prime, you get ad-free watching?
And had 2 children, Doge in 1992
Listening
and
with
Athena
Spotify
in
Premium?
1995. Despite nearly 250 days a year on the road, Owen was known to reschedule wrestling events in order to make time for his kids. Owen was always said to have had an eye on eventually leaving the industry much younger than some of his contemporaries so that he could spend more time with his family. By the time 1999 had rolled around, Owen Hart didn't always fit in with this new style. Owen wasn't seen as the most charismatic or compelling character, and this was mixed with his unwillingness to sully his real-life morals in the name of a storyline. One such storyline that had been pitched to Owen was to have an on-screen affair with Deborah Runnels, but due to Owen's strong family values...
Yeah, it was wild. They were wild, and I think that's, you know, one of the biggest things that had them beat WCW was just the X being fucking insane. Me personally, though, I do kind of like them better when they came back. In, like, you know, 08, 09, around that time, they were cartoonier, they were goofier.
Didn't even want the implication out there that he could be cheating on his wife. With few options left to them, the WWF decided to pitch a revival of the Blue Blazer character from a decade earlier. This time, however, the Blue Blazer would be more of a spoof of a superhero. His promos consisted of telling kids to take their vitamins and say their prayers, an ironic play on the classic Hulk Hogan promos of old against the grittier era that they were now in, and the Blue Blazer was seen as bumbling around whenever he tried to do his superhero actions. The concept behind the idea was a spoof of the white meat baby faces the WWF used to have front and center, but it was also to give Owen a chance to flex his comedic skills on camera. Despite his perception from the audience for being uncharismatic, Owen was a known prankster in the locker room, and it was believed that he
Little People Court was one of the funniest fucking things that they ever did, bro.
They were slightly concerned about bringing back a gimmick he hadn't done in a decade. Owen didn't want to be seen as problematic to saying no to every idea, so he agreed to don the blue superhero mask once more. As part of the bumbling superhero routine, and as a way to comedically parody Sting's entrance in the rival WCW, the WWF decided to occasionally have the Blue Blazer do a spectacular entrance by descending to the ring from the rafters. The punchline would be that the Blue Blazer would get stuck and be left dangling in the ring, unable to escape his own rigging. This had been done a number of times before over the edge, and typically Owen was rigged by one of the top companies in the world for these sort of stunts. The company utilized what is known as a locking carabiner to secure Owen to the apparatus. Essentially, this was a locking clip that ensured the safety of the performer. The usage of a locking carabiner was the industry standard for similar stunts. By the time Over the Edge rolled around
so
on
why
May 23rd,
not use that,
1999 in St.
Why not just fucking use the best thing that they've already used before?
Louis, Missouri,
Like, what the fuck?
the office had decided late in the process to once again have the Blue Blazer descend in a dramatic superhero entrance ahead of his Intercontinental Championship match with The Godfather. Some in the back, and particularly Vince McMahon and Vince Russo, felt that it wasn't good television to see the Blue Blazer and referees fumbling to try and unlock him from his rigging. They insisted they wanted to see the Blue Blazer descend heroically from the rafters, only to entangle on his wiring after being lowered, and unhook himself, falling flat on his face. In order to do this, they were going to need a faster method to unhook Owen from his rigging. They turned to stunt coordinator Bobby Talbot, who had been a part of Sting's entrances in WCW. In actuality, Talbot had only been an assistant on those stunts and never physically rigged anyone before. But when Martha Hart asked about the safety of the rigging in this last-minute decision, she was assured that the top riggers had been flown in from Los Angeles for Owen.
So they fucking lied and got some cheap fuck that never actually rigged something from a rival company.
The plan was to use a quick-release carabiner, typically found on sailboats instead of the locking one. This new carabiner only required 6 pounds of pressure to unlock, so it would be a considerably faster way to release Owen once he was safely lowered. Though the plan made sense on paper, it was generally understood among the stunt industry that not using a locking carabiner on a human being was extremely dangerous. On the day of the event, Owen was asked to do a dry run of the entrance and initially refused. used. His reasoning was that he had done the stunt a number of times before, so he didn't necessarily need to do it more than he already had to. He was finally convinced to do the practice run when he was told that they were using a new system, and the practices went smoothly. Those around Owen, however, said that he was generally off that day. Whether it was annoyance over the sudden change in his entrance or concerns over the new setup, Owen has consistently been reported as being in an unusual mood ahead of the show. When the time finally came, Owen climbed to the rafters to put on his gear and to be placed into the rigging. The lights in the arena were dimmed as both of the audience in the arena and the viewers at home watched a promo video on the Blue Blazer as Owen was set to begin his descent. Owen took his position and began his entrance, but before he could be properly lowered, the carabiner holding him unlocked, and Owen Hart plummeted 78 feet from the rafters to the ring. In the ring, Jimmy Corderas, who was scheduled to referee the match, was cleaning the ring from the hardcore title match that had just taken place. Owen allegedly screamed for him to look out as he fell, and the referee felt Owen's leg graze him, not knowing what it was he had just experienced. Owen landed chest first on the top rope and crumpled to the mat. Immediately, paramedics were called into the ring, and Jerry Lawler even jumped off commentary to try and help. After the promo had finished, Jim Ross was tasked with telling the audience at home about the heart.
Y'all think he would have survived? He would have got fucked up. Even if he lived that shit, he would have got fucking destroyed. But he could have. Y'all think that if he landed on his back and landed on the mat, y'all think he could have possibly lived that shit? Probably been paralyzed, probably broken every bone in his fucking body, but do y'all think he could have possibly lived that shit if he did not hit the rope?
Fall that had just taken place, and assuring them that it was
you hit your chest on the rope. Damn.
It's a real situation. Television cameras panned along the shocked crowd in an attempt to not show the ring, as EMTs attempted CPR on Owen, but he remained unresponsive. They decided to load him onto a gurney to bring him to a local hospital in a last-ditch attempt to save his life, as a shaken Jerry Lawler returned to the commentary desk to say it wasn't looking good. Word quickly spread among the wrestlers in the back about what had happened. Many initially thought that it was another one of Owen's pranks, but it quickly became apparent that this was a serious situation.
This would have told him to do the match from a wheelchair.
Gorilla position.
Yo, what the fuck was it? What was the I think it was Vince. Vince was in a wheelchair in the ring, and somebody fucking kicked the shit out of him in the face, or they did something, and he fucking. No, I'm lying. It was Bret Hart. Bret Hart was in the wheelchair. Y'all remember when Bret Hart was in the wheelchair and Shawn Michaels fucking kicked him straight in his mitt? And he fucking went back. That's what the fucking comment reminded me of. He probably would. And it being a thin mat, yeah, but like they've taken big bumps, not 78 fucking feet, but they've taken big bumps. And they fall on their back because it's like, you know, it's more the fucking weight and shit is distributed amongst the bigger muscles in your fucking back. Obviously, he's gonna get fucked up by, you know, 78-foot drop. No shit. I'm not fucking stupid, but like I feel like there is a very, very, very slim chance that if he hadn't landed the way he did, he would have fucking lived that shit. He probably would have ended up like Draws. He would have been paralyzed the rest of his fucking life, but he would have fucking lived.
For any sort of news, and watched as Owen was wheeled to the back on a gurney.
R.I.P. to your butt. I can't even say it again.
Decision that remains
R.I.P. to your big homie. He gets 5 big bumps.
Controversial to this day. Vince McMahon decided after a 15-minute delay.
What the fuck is it, dude? These videos are good, but this AI shit pisses me off. You have the fucking footage on the internet.
The event had a strange,
it already exists,
somberness to it, as the wrestlers performed while thinking of their critically injured friend, and had to wrestle on the boards that had cracked under the weight of his fall. Back at the hospital.
Imagine you're in the ring, you're doing a match, and then you fucking misstep, and you step into the dip where your man's just fucking died in, and you gotta just keep working.
Doctors did everything to try and revive Owen Hart. His initial Glasgow coma scale, which tests neurological functions, came back as a 3 out of 15, the lowest possible score, which typically indicates death or close to death. Hart's cardiac monitor revealed no activity, and Hart's body had turned blue. The doctors tried to stimulate Hart's body with epinephrine and once again attempted CPR, but it was all for naught. At 8:12 p.m., 33 minutes after his fall, Owen Hart was pronounced dead. The 78-foot plummet and landing had severed Owen's aorta, and in all likelihood, he had actually died when...
Why are they recreating it in a fucking game? Look at this shit. Look at this shit.
The 78-foot plummet and landing had severed Owen's aorta.
That's also not how he fell at all.
That died moments after he fell in the ring. Back in the arena, officials had received word that Owen was officially pronounced dead. Though the audience in the arena was never given any update on Owen's fate, Jim Ross came back from a break to announce that Owen Hart had died. The decision to continue over the edge after Owen's accident and eventual death was soundly criticized throughout the wrestling world and even news organizations. Vince Russo had tried to justify the decision, saying that Owen would have wanted the show to go on.
He probably would not have. You don't know him?
And Owen's wife Martha insisted that there was no way that Owen would want a show to continue after fans had witnessed a man dying in the ring. The Wrestling Observer newsletter deemed the continuation of Over the Edge as the most disgusting promotional tactic in 1999 in their year-end review. Raw the following night was dedicated to the memory of Owen Hart, featuring tributes from a lot of wrestlers. Owen's funeral a few days later had thousands in attendance, from wrestlers to fans. This was a testament to the impact that Owen Hart had on the industry. Soon after, the grief-stricken Martha Hart had swore that a day of reckoning would be coming for the WWE, as she looked out to find out what exactly had happened to her husband. Martha believed that because Owen
I wouldn't even shit on the company, I'd just be shitting on Vince.
Was such a cautious person, there had to be some degree of negligence that led to his demise. She traveled to Kansas City and actually walked the very catwalk that Owen fell from as she looked for answers. She was told that Owen's instructions were that as long as he didn't pull the cord, the stunt would go as planned. When she was finally shown the new system quick release carabiner, that's when the picture of what happened began to be clear. Martha believed that it was WWE's negligence that killed her husband. Martha ended up bringing a wrongful death lawsuit against the WWF, the city of Kansas, the riggers of the stunt, and Linda and Vince McMahon.
Yeah, they wanted something faster that was cheaper because they didn't want to see him fiddling around with the shit on TV. Because instead of having him be safe, they wanted something quick to look better. And then it ended up fucking them over. And then dude fucking died. That
Vince attempted to have the case moved to Connecticut, where the WWF was headquartered, in an attempt to lessen the damages. Connecticut does not allow for punitive charges to be laid against defendants in wrongful death lawsuits, where Missouri does, and Martha was seeking substantial punitive damages for the death of her husband. The request to have the case moved to Connecticut was overruled due to where the accident actually happened. The lawsuit was also contentious amongst the Harts themselves. As a wrestling family, many of them were uncomfortable with the idea of going into a legal war with Vince McMahon, the head of the biggest wrestling company in the world. Martha had even claimed that many of them attempted to sabotage the case by feeding McMahon and his lawyers information about the plaintiffs. This would cause a rift between Martha and many of the Harts, which persists to this day. The WWF offered a $17 million settlement, which was rejected, but eventually the two sides agreed on an $18 million settlement. This was one of the largest settlement figures ever reached in a wrongful death lawsuit. Martha received $10 million, each of Owen's kids were awarded $3 million, and both of Owen's parents received $1 million each. Much of Martha's settlement money was used to establish the Owen Hart Foundation, which helps support families with limited resources around the world. Due to the high profile of Owen Hart's death though, speculation has always been around that it was more than an accident that claimed Owen Hart's life. There's a conspiracy theory that Owen Hart's death was intentional, and all fingers are pointed squarely at one of the most powerful men in wrestling, Vince McMahon. Despite Owen's sterling reputation among the locker room, this conspiracy theory believes that Vince McMahon hated Owen Hart so much that he wanted him gone. Not just gone from his company, but gone from life. This conspiracy theory believes this for a few reasons. The first of these major reasons was injuring Stone Cold Steve Austin. In mid-1997, when Owen was the Intercontinental Champion, he was in a feud with Steve Austin, who was one of the biggest rising stars, not just in the company, but in the industry at large. So this was a very high-profile spot.
That injury definitely was Owen's fault. He definitely did the pile driver wrong and fucking damn near killed Steve. That definitely was Owen's fault. What did I join into? Me reacting for once.
Owen Hart. During their match at SummerSlam 1997, Owen reversed an attack from Austin into a sit-out pile driver. The problem was that Austin's head was too low and sat in between Owen's legs.
Yeah, so that fucking breaks his neck right there. So they're talking about it before the match, and Steve's like, oh, you're gonna drop to your knees, not to your ass, right? And he's like, yeah. And then as the match goes, without fucking telling him, he's like, we're gonna switch it up here. And then he broke his fucking neck.
Instead of against his thighs. When Owen delivered the move, instead of being cushioned, Austin's head legitimately went into the mat, resulting in a severe neck injury that momentarily paralyzed Steve Austin in the moment. Owen realized something was wrong and bought time by arguing with the crowd while the referee checked on Austin. Somehow, Austin was able to continue and ended the match with a weak roll-up, but the damage had been done.
Fuck that, I would have died. What, bro? What? Imagine, and it's so crazy because fucking Austin said, yeah, up until that point, match was great. Everything was chilling until that. And then imagine you have a good ass match and then you have to end it with a shitty roll up.
The biggest star in the WWF had a bruised spinal cord and even feared that he may never walk again. After the match, Owen was deeply troubled about the botched spot. Bret Hart.
I remember the interview where Steve Austin's sitting there in the fucking neck brace and like, oh, so how's life going for you? You know, healing up. He's like, you know, it's hard to drink beer with this fucking neck brace on. That kind of sucks.
Hart, who was friendly with Austin, told Owen to make sure that he called Austin to check.
I remember Steve Austin beat the shit out. Let me stop.
On his injury. Owen called Austin that night while he was in the hospital, but then forgot to check in for the rest of Austin's
hard to hit my
off.
wife with the neck brace on.
Owen claimed that when Owen went home, all he thought about and cared for was spending time with his family. So it wasn't a malicious reasoning for not calling Austin. Owen just didn't think to. Austin, who had also been friends with Owen, was hurt by what he felt was a lack of concern about his serious injury.
Me personally, I wouldn't be friends with him. Broke my fucking neck.
There were even reports that Austin claimed that he no longer wanted to do business with Owen Hart, both due to injuring him in the ring and with his subsequent handling of his injury. It's not unreasonable to think that Vince McMahon saw Owen Hart in a different light after breaking one of his biggest stars' necks. The WWF was in the...
That's not a reason to fucking kill him, bro. Oh my god.
WCW, and for the first time in some years, was starting to build some major momentum thanks to the popularity of Stone Cold Steve Austin. That momentum was threatened by Owen Hart's piledriver and could have been completely stifled if Austin's injury was worse than it was. This conspiracy theory believes that Vince McMahon had so much disdain for Owen for injuring his top star during such a critical time that he was willing to murder him. This is not the only reason that supports this conspiracy. Just 3 months later, the Montreal Screwjob happened. For many years prior, there were two men at the top of the WWE.
Owen had nothing to do with the fucking Screwjob.
Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. Because of this, there was an incredible amount of professional jealousy and animosity between the two as they jockeyed for the top position of the company. The situation became so toxic between the two that they even had a brawl in the locker room that resulted in a clump of Michaels' hair being pulled out by Bret.
This has nothing to do. Yeah, this is not.
Meanwhile, the popularity of WWF's chief competitor WCW was peaking. WCW had continued to acquire big-name talent and was able to pull more and more wrestlers from the WWF because of the large, guaranteed contracts that they were able to provide. Now they had their eyes on a new target, Bret Hart. In 1996, with his contract with the WWF expiring, WCW offered Bret Hart a 3-year, $8.4 million contract, but Bret declined the offer, instead re-signing with the WWF for a shocking 20-year contract. But by the time 1997 rolled around, the WWF was in dire financial straits, and this meant that they couldn't afford Bret Hart's contract any longer, and that they wanted to get away from long-term financial commitments. McMahon pushed Bret Hart to restart negotiations with WCW, which he did, and on November 1st, Bret Hart signed a $3 million per year deal with WCW. This did create a dilemma for the WWF, however. Bret Hart was the company's top champion,
our champion
and with him
is
leaving at the end of the month, that now gave WWF a hard deadline to get the title off the Hitman. Bret's final contracted appearance would be at Survivor.
And it was crazy because Bret had the idea. He's like, you know what? We're in my hometown. I'm fighting Shawn. We're going to have me win that way because I'm the hometown hero, right? I win. Rematch tomorrow. I drop the belt tomorrow. And they were like, no, that's not going to work with me. And then they fucked him over.
But it would be a title match against his real-life nemesis, Shawn Michaels. Making matters even more complicated, the event was set to take place in Montreal, and Bret was a Canadian hero. Bret Hart did not want to lose the title to Shawn Michaels in general, but he certainly didn't want to do it in Montreal. Instead, he suggested an alternative idea. He agreed to surrender the belt to McMahon on Raw the following night, on the agreement that the match at Survivor Series ended in disqualifications thanks to a brawl between the factions representing both men. In Bret's mind, this solved the issue of the title for the WWF, while still allowing him to save face in Canada. McMahon agreed to this idea, but behind the scenes, McMahon had concerns over allowing Bret Hart to leave Survivor Series as WWF champion. Only 2 years earlier, Medusa
doesn't matter if you drop it tomorrow,
while still holding the WWF Women's Championship, and took part in a segment on television.
Yeah, well, that bitch doesn't matter. Bret would not have done that.
McMahon was fearful of a repeat with the company's top title, and instead tried to brainstorm a different way to remove the belt from Bret. Then, the idea of a screwjob was presented to him. Depending on who's telling the story, either Vince Russo or Jim Cornette approached Vince with the idea to stop the match early without informing Bret, and set up a finish that saw Michaels legitimately beating Hart for the title.
If I'm not mistaken, Cornette proposed the idea of the fucking, the finish where it just ends up being a giant brawl amongst a whole bunch of people. And then I think that ended up turning into Bret just getting fucking screwed.
McMahon, Patterson, and Shawn Michaels met the night before the show to discuss the plan, and decided that a submission finish would be the easiest to manipulate. They informed Bret that the finish would involve Michaels putting Bret into his own finisher, the sharpshooter, which Bret would reverse, and it would lead to the brawl to finish the match. What they didn't tell Bret was that referee Earl Hebner had orders from Vince to call for the bell once Bret was in the sharpshooter, as if he tapped out. And on November 9th, 1997,
and you know what didn't make any fucking sense at all?
A confused and upset Bret Hart trashed ringside in anger as the show...
You know what didn't make any fucking sense in that situation at all is when Vince came out earlier in that match, and it's so funny because he tried to make it seem like he was the good guy. He was like, like he really fucking thought that people were going to be on his side for it. That was the funniest shit ever.
Even signaling WCW to the crowd. Afterwards, backstage, Bret Hart was so pissed off that he knocked Vince McMahon out cold.
Rocked this old fuck. It was so fucking fun. I'm saying that like I was there, but just hearing about it and seeing the pictures and shit, oh my god, he really fucking clocked him in his shit,
gave him a black eye. This is where Owen Hart enters the story. Owen was meant to be part of the brawl that would lead to the match being thrown out, and due to being Bret's brother, was obviously kept in the dark about the screw job.
Oh, I'm mad at you for
in the ring after the match,
leaving the company.
To calm his
kill your fucking brother.
He ended up flying out of Montreal with Bret and the rest of the Hart Foundation
later
that stupid. Night. Over the next few weeks, every member of the Hart Foundation left the WWF. Every member except Owen Hart. Owen initially requested to terminate his contract with the WWF,
Get him out of here!
Denied. But the conspiracy theory believes that Vince McMahon only held onto Owen for more sinister reasons, because in the space of a few months, the Hart family had wrecked his business. This conspiracy theory believes that because of Vince's hateful feelings, he straddled Owen Hart with the embarrassing Blue Blazer gimmick and then killed him. The Blue Blazer character put an end to any ability
Shut the fuck up. It's so fucking out of this world. To
to take Owen credibly as a serious competitor and was almost seen as a punishment. It was definitely unreasonable to think that a buffoonish superhero would legitimately get over with the crowd in the late 90s.
You left the company? Yeah, now look at your mans. He's a fool. We are stumbling and falling and shit. Plus one for me. Go Birds, dickhead.
Vince McMahon to purposefully bury Owen as payback for his problems with the Harts and for breaking his biggest superstar's neck. All of this calls into the questions about all the decisions revolving around that fateful stunt. It was a late decision to even do the stunt, and the rigors—
He is so ugly. He is so fucking ugly. It is crazy.
were ill-trained and using a piece of equipment that wasn't suitable for a stunt of that magnitude, not to mention callously continuing the show after Owen died in the ring. It does make you wonder if Vince McMahon was less surprised by Owen's tragic fall than anyone else. The next conspiracy theory that Owen Hart was purposefully killed by Vince McMahon is quite loopy, but it was found doing the research for this video, so it's only right to explain the conspiracy in its entirety so that you as the viewer can get the full picture. Some conspiracy theorists believe that Owen Hart was killed as some sort of satanic ritualistic sacrifice. The known evidence conspiracy—
Shut the fuck up, bro. No. Fuck off. Oh my god.
Theorists use is from Batman. Sounds strange, I know, but exactly 1 year to the day before Owen Hart died, on May 23rd, 1998, an episode of Batman was released with the title Over the Edge, which is very conveniently the exact same name of the pay-per-view that Owen Hart died on. What makes this even more weird is the summary of the episode, which is as follows. During a fight with the Scarecrow, Batgirl is ambushed on a rooftop and falls to her death. Jim Gordon blames Batman for her fate and vows revenge. This conspiracy theory believes that Owen's death was planned well in advance, and this episode of Batman was some sort of satanic foreshadowing for ritualistic purposes. What they say to support this theory that Vince McMahon sacrificed Owen is that the WWE started trading publicly only 4 months after Owen's death, and they sacrificed him to get publicity and to give an offering to the dark forces to ensure success. At the end of the day,
so we're blaming Batman out? I guess. I mean, shit.
Theories, but that doesn't totally absolve Vince McMahon from Owen Hart's death. It was the negligence of McMahon and the WWE.
We're gonna reach even further. Remember Sting's Joker gimmick in TNA? It was the Joker. He did it. Sting killed. I don't fucking know,
Owen
bro.
Hart's life. Many within the industry and Owen Hart's family, particularly Martha Hart, still blame Vince McMahon directly for pushing the envelope too far to the point where it became dangerous for his talent. And ultimately, it is a shame for what one negligent decision has done to the legacy of Owen Hart. Owen should be remembered for his technical brilliance within the ring, for his good standing among nearly every wrestler he came across, and for his utter devotion to his family. Instead, Owen is forever inextricably linked to the accident that took his life.
It's such a fucking shame too, because now that Vince isn't with WWE anymore and Triple H, DC stands for Demon Crew apparently. Shit. Instead of mending relationships with WWE now, because Martha Hart could very well be cool with Triple H. Like if you just sat down and talked to them. Like if they had like that conversation, they could put Owen in the Hall of Fame type shit, you know? That would be tough. But no, let me go do work with shitty ass AEW. Fuck. We got like the Owen Hart Cup in AEW. That would be perfect in WWE. That would be fucking perfect. It's such a fucking shame that, you know, instead of just sitting there and talking to Hunter and, what's his name? Nick Khan. Or talking to the fucking head guys, because Vince ain't there now. He's too busy shitting on bitches' heads.
Luckily, over the years,
my fault, that was crazy.
To remember
I'm not the same man as I was 10 seconds ago. That's what Vince said after he dropped this motherfucker from the ceiling.
Hard Cup tournaments over the past 3
hey,
years, and
garbage!
the Owen Hart Foundation continues to operate to this day. But unfortunately, because of the mistakes from Vince McMahon and the WWF on that fateful day in 1999, we will never get to know what greatness and positivity laid ahead for Owen Hart. Owen Hart Hart's not the only Canadian wrestler who had a conspiracy theory tied to him. There's also a conspiracy theory that Chris Benoit did not take the himself, wife, and child. And in fact, it was Kevin Sullivan.
The wait was worth it, look at me now.
If you'd like to check out the video on the Chris Benoit conspiracies.
What a fucking shame. That's crazy. Lex Luger killed Miss Olivia. Yeah, didn't he beat the shit out that bitch? He either beat her or he fucking got her hooked. I think the official story is that he got her hooked on some shit, and then she OD'd.